There's within my heart a melody, Jesus whispers sweet and low. Fear not, I am with thee, peace be still, in all of life's ebb and flow. Jesus, 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 sweetest name I know, fills my every longing, keeps me singing as I go. All my life was wrecked by sin and strife, discord filled my heart with pain. Jesus swept across the broken strings, stirred the slumbering chords again. Jesus, 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 sweetest name I know, fills my every longing, keeps me singing as I go. Soon he's coming back to welcome me, far beyond the starry sky. I shall wing my flight to worlds unknown. I shall reign with him on high. Jesus, 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 sweetest name I know, fills my every longing, keeps me singing as I go. And when the morning comes, man, if I don't use this, I'll start too high. Trials dark on every hand, and we cannot understand all the ways that God would lead us to that blessed promised land. But he'll guide us with his eye, and we'll follow till we die. We will understand it better by and by. By and by, when the morning comes, when the saints of God are gathered home, we will tell the story, how we've overcome, and we'll understand it better by and by. Oft our cherished plans have failed, disappointments have prevailed, and we wandered in darkness, heavy-hearted and alone. But we're trusting in the Lord, and according to his word, we will understand it better by and by. By and by, when the morning comes, when the saints of God are gathered home, we will tell the story, how we've overcome, and we'll understand it better by and by. Temptation's hidden snares often take us unawares, and our hearts are made to bleed for some thoughtless word or deed. And we wonder why the test when we try to do our best, but we'll understand it better by and by. By and by, when the morning comes, when the saints of God are gathered home, we will tell the story, how we've overcome, and we'll understand it better by and by.
He is a forgiving God. Thank the Lord for that, right? Anything else? Any verses that jump out at you this week? I have one I'm going to talk about a little bit later, but Well, in 2 Samuel and 1 Chronicles that we read this week, the first thing that happened, David fled. He left Jerusalem. Why? Don't remember? Who was taking power? Does that help you? Absalom, his son, right? And when he did that, he fled, and he was out there in the wilderness, and a man named Ziba approached him. Now, do y'all remember who Ziba is? Don't remember. Mephibosheth. Yeah, he was like the main. Yeah. Huh? Yeah, head attendant, somebody that would take care of things for Mephibosheth. He was supposed to take care of all of the property. And Mephibosheth did not come with David. He did not leave. You remember, David brought him to his own table, and because he's the only one, he was Jonathan's son, and he was crippled, and David said, "You're going to eat at my table the rest of your life." Well, when David fled, Mephibosheth did not go with him, and Ziba said something. What was it? Why Mephibosheth didn't leave? Remember? He basically said that Mephibosheth thought this would be a great time for him to take over as king because his grandfather was King Saul, and he could take over when David fled. And that's what Ziba told David. And so David said, okay, everything that used to belong to Mephibosheth, all of the land and everything that had originally belonged to King Saul, was now all Ziba's. And then later, when David gets back, Mephibosheth meets him and said, Ziba lied. I did not do that. I didn't go because I don't remember what excuse he had, but then David said, okay, y'all just split it. So it could have been, Mephibosheth was hoping to become king, and Ziba was telling the truth. It could have been that Ziba was lying. The Bible doesn't really say. But basically, David just says, you can split it. On his way out of Jerusalem, there was a man named Shimei that was cursing him and throwing rocks at him. Do you remember what he accused David of doing? Murdering who? It wasn't Uriah the Hittite, which he was guilty of that. But he was accusing him of murdering King Saul and Jonathan and the other sons. Is that true? No, he didn't have anything to do with that. He tried his best not to kill Saul, but he left it in God's hand, and God took care of Saul in the battle, and Jonathan and all of the others. But Shimei, who was a Benjamite, blamed David for it anyway. So then you had Absalom takes over, and he immediately he gets to a meeting with Ahithophel. And I'd never even thought about Ahithophel being, they said it could have been Bathsheba's father. But he was probably an older man who was a counselor, a very wise man. And he told him to do several things, and he did. But then later he said, well, you need to go after David right now. And yes, I just went like the other guy said, oh, no, you shouldn't do that. You should, because David won't be with the troops, and they're a man of war. The troops are very, very good. You ought to wait and get all of Israel together and then attack David. And so that's what Absalom decided to do. And Ahithophel basically, he went out and hung himself because he could see the writing on the wall that if David came back and, because he had joined sides against David, that he would be killed anyway. So what happened to Absalom? Yes, his hair or his head. the word could be used either way, but I think it was his hair, the thing, because they talked about how he cut it once a year, and it weighed like 5 pounds that they cut off every year. And his hair got caught in a tree, and he was hanging there, so what happened to him? Yeah, Joab basically killed, well, Joab speared him, and then the other soldiers killed him as well, or killed him. But it was mainly Joab that was in instigator of all of that. Joab does not seem like a very, very good person. He seems very, very warlike and everything. But last week, and I don't remember what it was, that he said something that made you wonder, that's probably pretty good advice, but that's coming from Joab, so I don't know. We have that again tonight that we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. Well, then the next little story is about the famine coming. And do you remember what caused the famine? Something that Saul did. He attacked and killed and tried to wipe out the Gibeonites. Do y'all remember who the Gibeonites were? Okay. They were Canaanites. And remember, after the battle of Jericho, or Ai, or I guess both of them, they sent emissaries to Joshua and said, hey, we come from a long way off, and we've heard about all of what you did, and we want you to make a treaty with us. So Joshua made a treaty. Joshua and the leaders made a treaty with them. And then they found out the Gibeonites lived in the promised land, and God had told him not to make any kind of promises with them, or any kind of agreements, and they did. And so they basically said, we're not going to kill you, and yet King Saul tried to kill them. And because of that, the famine came to the land. Do you remember what had to happen in order for the famine to be stopped and the Gibeonites, whatever word I want? No, that's later. They basically wanted retribution against Saul's family. And so David said, fine, I'll give you 7 of Saul's descendants, and you can kill them. You can hang them and kill them. But not Mephibosheth, because he had already made this agreement, promise to take care of Mephibosheth. So they took 7 of the other distant relatives, grandsons or whatever, and they killed them, and then the famine stopped. What does this reveal about God? He remembers. He is just. He takes sin seriously. And he keeps his promises. I know it was the Joshua and the people that made the promise to the Gibeonites, but in a sense it was God too. I don't know who keeps calling, but and because of that, and because of what Saul did, he is a just God. He's a holy God, but he's a just God, and he has to punish sin. I mean, he wouldn't be who he is. He wouldn't be God. He wouldn't be a holy God if he did not punish sin. And so that's what happened. Also reminds us that our sins can affect other people. Because these guys that were killed, they had nothing to do with that. That was all King Saul. But because they were relatives, then that happened. 2 Samuel, this one was just the last couple of days. Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. Yes. Yeah. Yes. That's right. When I was in seminary, I took a class, well, actually 2 classes, but they were called systematic theology. And one of them, I was having to write a paper, and I went up to the professor that was in the other class. I had both of them at the same time, which is, I would not, yeah, I know. But it was my last semester, and I wanted to get it done. And I had Dr. Garrett, James Leo Garrett. Yeah, they called him Machine Gun Garrett. I mean, he talked really fast. And yeah, anyway, I went up to him and asked him about, if he would give me a suggestion of what to write my paper on for the other guy. And he told me about these 2 people and gave me, I don't remember who they are or anything, but one of them really emphasized the fact that God is love. And that, there are characteristics like God is, honest, he's good, but he is love. That is who he is in essence. He is love. And because of that, in the way he wrote it, it's almost like no one was going to go to hell. Everybody's going to be saved. And then this contrasting guy, his whole thing was God is holy, which he is. And he is completely set apart from sin, and his holiness demands justice and demands these things. And when you read him, it was almost like, well, no one's going to ever make it into heaven. And I wrote the paper to contrast the 2 on what they believed and everything. Got a good grade on it too. But I would have never, it's just, you have to remember that God is love, but God is also holy. And he combines those 2 perfectly. And sometimes it's hard for us to understand that. We can't always understand what's going on. Yes. The way he thought they were done. Yes. Yes. Just like us. And that's when people get in trouble. That's why Joshua got in trouble with the Gibeonites, because he didn't take it to God. David, the same thing. David later, the next story, and there's a lot into this one, but it starts out David taking a census. And 2 Samuel, who is it that says incited David to take the census, according to 2 Samuel? Yeah, God. In 2 Samuel. In 1 Chronicles, it says Satan. How can those 2 coincide? Yeah. Anyone want to take a stab at that one? Yes. Yes. It's very, very, very similar to Job, probably, that Satan came to God and said, well, Job, if you do this to him, or if you allow me to do this to him, then he'll curse you. And God said, go ahead. I think that's what's going on here too. I think Satan is probably saying, I want to test David. And I'm going to incite him to take this census, and God allowed it to happen. God allows some things like that in our lives so that we can learn and we can grow. And David learned a very, very serious lesson here, but he learned. Why was the census sinful? After all, they'd taken census several times before, right? What was different about this one? Well, maybe, but that's not what I'm thinking of. Number one, God did not tell him to do it. All of the other times it says God tells him to take this census. This one, David decided on his own. And I think maybe part of it is David was wanting to know how many people he had in his kingdom, how many soldiers he had. He was kind of feeling proud and wanting to see. Unfortunately, Southern Baptists are really bad about this. We are probably one of the very few denominations that are really into numbers, about how many members you have, what's your average attendance. You can ask Terry, we were talking about this a few minutes ago. We have an annual church profile. Used to call it something else. But anyway, ACP, Annual Church Profile, and we have to turn it in every year. And it tells how many members we have and how our Sunday school is and how many baptisms and how much money we give to this. And Baptists are really bad about that. And probably we need to be very careful. I mean, it's good to know who your people are and be able to get in touch with them and things that way, but just to have a number so you can brag about it is not good. My dad used to say all the time, if you count toesies instead of nosies, you'll do a lot better. Something like that. So what were the three options that God gave to David as punishment? He had three options. Three days of plague. I thought it was just three. I thought they were all three. Was it 7? Okay, and what was the other?
Or shall you flee 3 months before your enemies when
Yeah.
they pursue you?
Or the 3 days.
There be 3 days plague in your land.
Okay, so famine or attacked by the enemies and being run out of Jerusalem again for 3 months, or 3 days of pestilence. And what did he choose? Why? It would be faster, yes, but that's not the reasoning he gave when he said it. Do you remember what he said?
Don't let me fall in the hands of my enemies.
Yeah. Don't let me fall in the hands of my enemies. Let me fall in the hands of God, because maybe God will be merciful. Now, how many people died? 70,000? Yeah. And where did it end? This is very, very important. Where did the angel of death, where did he stop? Yes, at the threshing floor of Araunah, however you say it, the Jebusite. Now, Araunah, Jebusite is a person that lived in Jerusalem before David took over Jerusalem. But it's even more specific than that. It's on the hill of Moriah, or the mountain of Moriah. What do we know about that mountain? Calvary. That's right, Calvary. That's where Abraham offered Isaac. It's where the temple was built. The mountain is part of where it was where Jerusalem was built and where the crucifixion took place and all of that stuff. In 2 Chronicles, which we will read a little bit later. I don't think we're still in 1 Chronicles. It says, Solomon began to build the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem on Mount Moriah, where the Lord had appeared to his father David. It was on the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite, the place provided by David. That's the exact spot that Abraham offered Isaac, the exact spot that Jesus was crucified, and David bought it from this Jebusite in order for that to be the place and the temple on that mountain and everything. You go back to Genesis 22. David, this is with Abraham, and God tells him to take your son, your only son, and go to the region of Moriah and sacrifice him there, or offer him as a sacrifice there. So that's very, very significant. I've told you before that there are certain time periods, certain days of the year, like when Passover occurs, and then Pentecost was, Easter with Passover, and then I truly believe in the fall, in September, October, that time period is where you have the Feast of Trumpets, and it wouldn't surprise me a bit if that's when Jesus returns, because it says the sound of trumpet, and that might be when he returns. It wouldn't surprise me. But all of these times are important, and also places are important. That's why Israel and Jerusalem especially has been the center of history for a long, long time. Think about this little bitty country. I mean, it's not very big. And yet, it's the center of, 3 religions are right in that area. And it has been pivotal in a lot of world history. And I think that's because it's a very important place. I do want to talk about one psalm, Psalm 97. It starts out, "Sing to the Lord a new song." And when I first thought about that, I thought about, we've gone to, Council Road Baptist Church. We went there 2 or 3 times while we were looking. And their music, and a couple of times it was because a friend of, says one of her best friends was leading the music, but they sang songs that I had never heard before. They were new songs. To me, they were new. And I didn't see a lot of other people singing. And so my first thought was, why would you sing a new song instead of singing an old, one that everybody knew? And then I got to thinking about how most of the songs, especially, all of the songs really, that have ever been written have been written because of somebody had something that in their life that caused them to write this song. And I thought, that makes sense. If we all ought to be writing our own songs. Now, I don't mean you have to put it to music and stuff like that, but think about what it is that God has done in your life and praise Him for it. And to me, it started out as one thing and then it turned into something completely different as I was thinking about that. But to me, that would be a perfect way to sing a new song, is to praise God for what He's done in my life, specifically things that He's done in my life. And yes, you can use people's songs and you can get a lot out of them, but it's not quite the same as something that comes from you personally. So maybe you ought to try that sometime this week. Just sit down and write out what God's done for you. Yes? Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It did. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No. It could have been a lot like May 3rd, several years ago. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking when I was reading through it about how closely it parallels with Psalm 8, which was one of my favorite. There it goes again. Yeah, God is powerful, and He can calm the storm, and He did that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Just remember, when Lord returns, it'll be just like lightning from the east to the west, right? All right.
They're saying that the rapture could take place anytime, that there is no event that needs to take place for the
Yes.
rapture to take place. So is that imminent?
Yes, I believe it is.
I do too.
I believe it'll happen during my lifetime.
I
So,
do too. I do. And I've heard ministers and I read the word and everything, and it says, keep your eyes, not upon the things of this world, but look unto God.
yeah.
Keep your eyes on Him.
Of course, I want to remind you, Paul thought it was going to happen in his lifetime too. So, all right.
Probably true of every generation.
Probably so.
My grandpa also.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that teaches us, though, why are we worrying about when that, what time that rapture should take place, instead of worrying about what are we doing for God today?
Exactly. Yes. Getting other people prepared. That's our job. Is get them there. Yep. Anything else? All right. Well, let's stand and join hands, and we will sing our dismissal chorus.